Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Wadier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Wadier, and I'm here, as always, with my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Doing exceptional, my friend. It is episode 300 of the Fasting for Life podcast. We are going to take you on a journey today. We're going to share a little bit about the origin story of why we do this, where we are, what our goals are, what we want to accomplish with Fasting for Life to help you ultimately adopt a fasting lifestyle, lose the weight once and for all, and as we like to say, begin with the end in mind, reach your forever goal, living a full life that you truly deserve, not worried about medications, reversing disease once and for all, diabetes, blood sugar issues. Today's going to be fun because we're going to talk about and look back in the time machine about how we talked about fasting in the beginning versus now. We're going to share some testimonies of some of the greatest transformations that we've seen. We're going to look at some stats and some of the research and what's changed in that avenue as well. We're going to talk about the future of what we're going to be doing here at Fasting for Life, but most importantly, this shift that we see in complementary alternative medicine, or this search for alternatives to prevention rather than managing sickness and disease with the current healthcare system that we have. So if you are new to the podcast, you have picked a doozy to start with. It's going to be a ton of fun. Welcome into the Fasting for Life ecosystem. Happy to have you with us. Thanks for giving us a shot. If you want to know more about Tommy and I and how we started and why we started and how fasting's been so transformational for us and now thousands of others, head back to episode 0, episode 1. Give it a listen. We're actually going to share the most consumed episodes today as well.
Nice.
And it's pretty crazy to think we started this back in 2020 and here we are now. So that's a transition into the gratitude that we have for each and every one of you that's been a long-term listener, that sends us a message saying, hey, I found your podcast on a road trip. I've now listened to 70 episodes. And I'm like, wow, that is a lot of our voices. So kudos to you. But the OGs, the long-term listeners, we are grateful for every like, every share, every listen. So thank you so much for being on this mission with us, Tommy. And today, let's start off with a bang. Let's start off with one of the most powerful reviews, 5-star reviews. Actually, this person says 10-star review that we've ever received on the podcast after thousands of reviews, just over 1,100 at this point. This one really just kind of came at a very timely fashion where we're going to be talking about big picture of what we've done with Fasting for Life, where we're going, and ultimately how we can help you adopt a fasting lifestyle. So let's kick it off, Tommy.
Yeah, let's do it. Rick Bernier says 10 stars. Thank you, Rick. Wanted to send a heartfelt thank you to both of you. I just completed my first 100 days of, quote, hitting singles. Hitting singles is something that we talk about a lot on many, many episodes. Instead of just swinging for the fences, just always trying to go for a home run, let's just hit a bunch of singles. That's how the best baseball players do it. If we think about that with our fasting lifestyle, we're probably going to get to some big results too. He says, I'm a 42-year-old male, 5'10", started off at 247, and I'm down to 202, 45 net pounds. Congratulations. I reintroduced creatine to my diet, have been doing light resistance training, so I probably shed even more than that 45 that I see on the scale. The knowledge gained, intellectual motivation, and optimizers you provided has been an absolute game changer for me. I've listened to probably 100 of your episodes. Wow. and have shared with several friends and family. My 73-year-old mother is now following you too. Thank you, Rick.
Nice.
Yeah. So sorry for breaking the don't talk about fasting rule, but I can't help myself. Not only have I seen incredible results, I now live with the confidence I'm done with the diet roller coaster once and for all. Congratulations to. I was that guy who constantly gained and lost. This time,
Hold
it's
on.
absolutely.
He said, I was with an asterisk.
Yeah.
That guy who constantly gained and lost. Keep going.
Right. This time it's absolutely different. I went into this intentionally not putting any expectations on myself other than a commitment to stay the course, and could not have imagined the results I've seen so far. So that I want to highlight too real quick is because rather than being just so finish line oriented, so just goal based oriented, the goal here for Rick was stick with the course. Just keep going, right? Just keep swimming here.
Just keep
and,
swimming.
And doing that means that you're more focused on the process rather than living and dying by the result, which oftentimes for us is just stepping on the scale and seeing and judging our past actions based on that. So through a simple variety of 14 to 27 hour fast with 149-hour fast, shifted my nutrition opportunity windows somewhere between 8 and 2 p.m., 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., depending on the day. I lost 30 pounds in my first 50 days and 15 in the last 50. Incredible. My goal is to continue this for life. Plan to ramp up with some more extended fast. I also plan to give myself grace and focus on hitting those singles, prioritizing protein, of course. I'm still another 22 pounds away from where I think I'd like to be, but not chasing the scale anymore. I know consistency and grace will get me to better health. Thank you both so much. Keep up the incredible work you're doing. Thank you. It means a lot to so many. You're doing it better than anyone out there I've checked. That's incredible. Thank you so much, Rick.
Rick, man, you encompass so many of the things that Tommy and I truly believe and coach from, and really speaks to the reason why, we started this podcast is our own journey and our own struggle, right? So we're going to talk about how, and just big picture, how we talk about fasting now and the things we talk about now versus how we talked about fasting then. Like, let's say the first 50 episodes of the podcast, 100 episodes of the podcast, right?
Yeah.
So we're not going to go back and give you the whole story, but the reality is that Tommy and I were both struggling with what Rick just explained. We had a goal, we had a plan, we had the diet roller coaster, we had the eat less, move more, we had the macro calculators, we had
past diet failures and diet baggage too.
The diet baggage, we had the labs and the lifestyle things, the metabolic stuff that was starting to creep in, like the elevated liver enzymes and the elevated blood pressure.
Family history that we were worried about, trying to change that for ourselves and for our kids too.
Yeah, that family history of diabetes and cardiovascular disease and all of these things. And it just came into focus once we started, we both read Dr. Fung's Obesity Code. And we both read the book. Tommy was about 6 months ahead of me in this journey. And I just said to him on Father's Day in 2019, I was like, hey man, like, okay, you've got a degree in psychology, you have a master's in physiology. I'm like, put me on the couch or put me in your clinic. Like, I'm your patient.
Yep.
What the hell are you doing to get the results that I've seen over the last 6 months with you? You're just a different person. You look different. Your energy's different. You'd lost like 20 or 30 pounds at that point.
Yeah.
And I just said,
feeling very different though, too.
Go ahead.
Feeling very different though, too, which was part of like our interactions were changing. We're both chasing around little kids at that point, but I was starting to do it differently in a much more comfortable, confident kind of way rather than just hanging out at the island in the kitchen and just trying to remain in the shadows, right?
But you had your business, you had your life, you had your kid, the new kids, right? The young kids. I was in full-time clinical practice. My wife was starting a practice. We just had our first. So life wasn't slowing down, right?
Accelerating.
It was accelerating rapidly. And you said, hey, read this book, The Obesity Code by Dr. Fung. So I've been doing intermittent fasting and keto and hired a very expensive nutrition coach here in Houston, is world-renowned for working with body composition and athletes and performance. And I had been following that process, and I was labeled a slow oxidizer which means I don't process, glucose or energy quickly. So
Mhm.
really what that meant was I had insulin resistance, which I later found out after a long winding road down the functional medicine, which we'll talk about in the future in this episode in a little bit, of the functional medicine path to figure out why I wasn't feeling good, even though I was doing all of the right things.
Mhm.
Come to find out I had insulin resistance, read the book, started fasting, lost 48 and a half pounds in 50 days with Tommy kind of coaching me through the do's and don'ts and the stumbling blocks and the how to break
Yeah.
your fast. And I didn't really listen very well. So it
Right.
was quite painful, but
In
very,
one ear, out
very,
the other.
very, very, very rewarding with the scale.
Mhm.
But then the reality is that half of that weight came back over the next 6 months. Right. I was like, okay, all right. Well, I guess I didn't reach the finish line.
Yeah.
Cool.
It doesn't stay off on its own, apparently.
Yep. Okay. So
Mhm.
repeating the same mistakes. Okay. So let's go optimize that. And what we did then is we started, because Tommy, you had your business in life, I had my business in life, and it was like, all right,
Mhm.
I feel like we just need to share our story. And that's originally where like the origin story of Fasting for Life came from. And we named it Fasting for Life because over the process that we went through, you were about 6 months ahead of me, but over those first 6 to 18 months, we realized like, whoa, wait a minute, this is really working. And back then, fasting was still, let's put it this way. When we started in the fasting space, there was like Jen Stevens, us, and Dr. Fung, and maybe a couple of others,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Now, intermittent fasting is like a household name. It's something
Sure.
that is more commonly accepted. We're seeing it more in the research. Um, we'll get to that in just a minute. But the reality is like fasting, when we first started, we're like, all right, we've been able to figure this out. So you know what? Let's go help more people do this. And when we
Mhm.
recorded that first episode, which now almost has 100,000 downloads just for that first episode alone,
Oh, wow.
we realized in the feedback and the messaging that we were getting from people was like, just to Rick's testimony here, his 10-star review. Thank you again, Rick. Is that it like we felt like we were onto something,
Yeah.
right? We weren't reinventing the wheel. We were reinventing the application of the tried and true fasting. And through the years, we've realized, and the research has shown this with Marie Spreckley and her team, that it's this transformation of your core values and the person that you are that truly allows you to become the individual that adopts a new lifestyle, that has new default behavior patterns, new subconscious
Mm.
cues. And it's not something that's just attainable by the motivation of, man, I need to lose some weight. It's January. My doctor said, et cetera, et
Sure.
cetera.
Yeah.
But it really ties into a greater why, which is kind of part of our root story of why we started this, is because our whys were much greater than just a number on the scale. They were taking that diet package, compartmentalizing it, saying, hey, there's got to be a better way to get off this fasting, this weight loss roller coaster. And now you see fasting is, especially in the research, you see it being adopted as a potential strategy for the obesity epidemic that we have, the diabetes epidemic that we have, the health epidemics that we currently have in the country and worldwide now. We're seeing it be more adopted. So the way we talk about fasting back then was really just like okay, here's your fasting schedule.
Mhm.
Go take an action, stay consistent, to Rick's point.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a lack of fasting knowledge. In the beginning, we talked a lot about just basic fasting knowledge, like basic, like fasting 101 type stuff. Now we talk so much more about that lifestyle, personalization, customization, sustainability piece than I ever could have thought we would.
Right. Right. About integrating the actions into your self-image, to what you were alluding to before, integrating those daily actions into what your personalized roadmap and personalized journey is going to look like. What are the individual problems that you're trying to solve for, and how best to do that in a way that leads to the growth and development of the skills that you'll continue to need and use during maintenance, rather than just an on-off switch. Once I get the weight off, then I stop using the tools. And that's how most, diets and weight loss, methods are kind of, they're kind of designed around this kind of on-off mentality, which is why, the research shows 5% keep it off. That's essentially like what percentage of lottery winners keep the money after
Right.
a couple of years. I bet it's a strikingly similar kind of statistic, because if you just snap your fingers and you're instantly a millionaire, you don't know what to do with that. You don't have a different.
You're
set
not
of
the person that
tools.
can manage that, right?
Right. You didn't create it. Why would you be able to manage it? Of
Yep.
course, that would be a very difficult thing to do. So if we think about burning through extra fat stores in a similar way, there's going to need to be a keen eye on the long-term goals here and sustainable tool development.
So this is what, just as an example of how we talk about fasting now versus then, we say often it's not a problem until it's a problem, is that this conversation around maintenance, right? So as we started building out the challenges and the coaching and the resources and the website and all these different things, and we started taking thousands of people through this process, we got a lot of feedback. And we never even really had thought about, even though we said begin with the end in mind, right? So 10,000 hours makes a master, right? Like Tom Brady didn't just wake up and, just go win all of the Super Bowls. He did the dull, mundane stuff consistently, probably obsessively, to some degree, if you know a little bit about his story, and his obsessive competitive nature, where he did the film review and he did put in the extra hours and he was the first one there and all the cliche stuff, right?
Right.
But then when the situation came for game time, he wasn't just going in being like, I'm just going to wing it. He had all of those tens of thousands of hours of repetitions, which allowed him to perform at a higher level. So it's like when we're thinking about this lifestyle transformation, the person that you are off in the future is not the person that you are now. And we're not going to fake it till you make it. We're going to act as if. Right? We're going to get those repetitions using the tools, and then we're not just going to throw the tools out, right? So you run a marathon, you don't throw out your shoes and walk barefoot the rest of your life, right? There's still an application for those shoes. It's just not going to be logging as many miles a week to ramp up for the event. You're going to be now doing more maintenance runs. You're going to be adopting running into your long-term your long-term plan until you get the desire to go and push for a new goal. But that identity shift is key. So when we talk about maintenance, we now have a really cool perspective, because when it comes to maintenance, and we've seen this, hundreds of times now with folks that have gone through coaching in our challenges, when you get within that like 3 to 5 pound range, and we don't have the data, we haven't tracked this, but we're going to start, is when you look at the data of the, in the US and globally, is that about between the 2 and 3 year mark, 95% of people give the weight back that they lost. Right? Now, in a moment, that excess weight isn't a problem. Long term, we know that it's metabolically unhealthy, which leads to chronic lifestyle disease and heart disease and cardiovascular issues. And at the root of that is that insulin resistant, that weight loss resistance that we talk about. So maintenance now, we talk more about maintenance now because what we've realized is that the things you're going to do in maintenance are the things that you need to practice.
Right.
It's not just the timing of the schedule. It's how do we manage our personal journey? Our, in the medical system, you get some labs done. You're put in a box. You're put in a compartment of, oh, you have this thing, or you have this problem. Here's your solution.
Or you will have this problem. You're a this problem.
Yeah, you're a this problem.
You'll be there. You'll be there. Yeah, give it some time.
But what we've realized is in the prevention game, or in the reversal game, the balancing hormones, reversing diabetes, blood sugar issues, et cetera, the weight loss resistance game, is that we need to practice those reps now, or else the sustainability never truly happens. So this idea, we never used to even think about maintenance back then because we were still going through the process of what maintenance looks like.
Right.
I haven't reached my end goal. I've still got 5 pounds of visceral fat to lose. I'm still working on body composition, but did I just quit fasting? Well, no, I'm not doing the long extended fast or really being super hyper diligent on my fasting, because now I have it ingrained in my lifestyle. And this is what we hear from so many thousands of emails and messages, and the 10-star reviews from Rick and all of these different things, is that the beginning with the end in mind means acting as if, doing the things that you eventually want to become as an individual, those core values, doing some of those things now so they become ingrained along with you along the way.
Well, yeah, and as we're talking about reversal, we're talking about how these skills can lead to sustainable lifestyle change. What you're looking at there is, what do I have to do once I get to my forever number, once I get to my weight goal? Well, instead of asking yourself that question, it's more like, how are these fat burning tools going to help me and going to serve me when I'm at that goal number. So picturing yourself spending just, seconds and minutes every once in a while, considering, okay, let me paint myself a little picture here. At my forever number goal, what does that look like? What will I be doing then? How will I maintain that? How am I using the skills that I'm using now, but then a little bit differently? So just to your point, Scott, maybe if you love 2 or 3 day fast right now for fat loss purposes, maybe planning to do one of those every once in a while,
Every
even
quarter.
at maintenance. Yeah, once a quarter, that's a great goal. But like even just like we see this sometimes, and we talk to people who have been fasting for so long or been working on losing like burning through the fat for so long that that part can be part of their self-image, and it can be hard to let go of some of those longer fasts even during maintenance, when now you need more opportunity to get good nutrition in, but really you haven't had haven't had as many reps. Or a lot of times we hear it's easier to fast than it is to eat, because I feel like it's a slippery slope when I start eating. Well, that's absolutely highlighting something that we need to be working on and flexing and thinking about and optimizing and improving our skills right there while we're burning the fat. Otherwise, that problem's still going to be there during maintenance. It's just going to be that much worse because we've been kind of kicking the can down the road. So integrating those food choices and making those and starting to work on fixing our relationship with food is a conversation for now and the next step of my fat loss journey and into maintenance as well, rather than just, oh, well, I'll deal with that later when I get there or when I get to maintenance. No. We want to be working on it now for sure.
Yeah, so fasting back then was more about, okay, strategically knowledge, what are we going to do? But we've seen a shift to the fasting now where it's much more integrated. We're seeing it in the better studies, right? We're going to share some cool stats from some of the podcast episodes and give you some of the highlights. So if you're new or if you're an OG, you want to go back and listen to these episodes, because these are the ones that we've seen just in a statistical anomaly in terms of consumption, which means that what was said on that episode really resonated with y'all. So we want to highlight that. But to continue this conversation of fasting then, when we started, to fasting now and how our voice has changed. And then we'll talk about what we see as and how we see fasting being part of the future healthcare strategy that we think everyone should employ based on where we at in terms of the money we spend on healthcare and how sick and suffering we are as a race, that those things aren't working. And we're seeing a big shift in that. So we'll talk about that later in the episode. But right now, what we've seen over the last 18 months to 2 years is, fasting is now become more mainstream, more accepted. It's not, to Rick's point, more of a, not to Rick's point, we have another podcast review that we're going to share from He Who Knows Knows that mentioned, that what we're seeing in the research and what we're seeing with fasting being more accepted is it's not seen as more of like a fad diet anymore. It's seen as more acceptable. So you don't have that first really big hurdle to push in terms of your lifestyle with your friends and your family. And, you're not as seen as much as the crazy person who's skipping a meal, right?
Yeah, but you're starving yourself, right?
Yeah, oh my God, why would you do that, right? So when we look at the studies now and some of the trends that we've seen, we're seeing a tremendous improvement in the type of studies that are being done.
Yes, 100%.
The macro breakdown, we're seeing studies that actually show, and we did a lot of them earlier this year in 2025, higher protein content, right? Really focusing on the superpower of the macronutrient, really doubling down on that protein. We're seeing a lot more studies in women. And this is some feedback, good and bad, that we get is, well, women need to fast differently than men. And yeah, absolutely they do. And there's titans in the industry like Dr. Mindy Pelz that have decent programs for that. But what I still feel is missing is that personal application and that accountability and encouragement along the way. So we're seeing these studies and the fact that women can fast and they get great results. And it actually is a superpower that we should be using to balance hormones, remove insulin resistance, and ultimately lose the weight that we want to lose. We see studies now focusing more on body composition, right? And we did a study recently this year on an episode where we talked about muscle growth and can you actually build lean muscle tissue while you're using a fasting lifestyle? The answer is absolutely yes. We're seeing more and more fasting applications for diabetes reversal and time to reversal. And what happens when you have higher, more hedonic, obesogenic food, ultra-processed refined food meals versus more whole food meals? And what does your physiology do in that 2 weeks post going, air quotes, off your diet or off your lifestyle? What is your physiology doing that's driving your decision making and driving your motivation to either wax or wane that really undermines the consistency or the effort? So impatience is that form of resistance, as we say. But with the research lately, I mean, the type of research that we're seeing and the application that we're seeing is really encouraging to us that we are truly moving in the right direction for prevention and overall health.
Yeah, we're even seeing, like you mentioned, some of the psychological aspects, but even more to your point, the neurological aspects and the applied neurology behind what's going on within the brain and the central nervous system.
Cravings, hunger,
yes,
decision making, real life, like in the moment stuff.
Yeah, because like everything affects everything else, and so if we can understand that from a more like zoomed out, holistic approach of what's going on within the body, within the psychology, within our own emotional relationships with food and our decision making processes, and integrate those to our personalized goals, then now we're kind of armed with the tools that it's not just up to random chance. Can I be part of that 5%? Am I going to roll the dice and win the lottery to be part of that 5%? Or am I understanding what those moving parts are and reverse engineering success every step of the way, rather than just waiting and then hopefully if and when I reach my end goal, then I'll be able to stay there. So it's very different. We're seeing that integrated within the research where they're actually building upon the knowledge base that's been building, because there were basic fasting studies a long time ago, just kind of talking about the very basics of, okay, well, what happens in the human body whenever you go a few hours or maybe a couple of days without a meal. And so it kind of starts off very basic from there, but what the answers that we've been able to kind of glean and integrate within some coaching experience over the last 4 to 5 years now has been really interesting as the research has shifted, because they're getting more nuanced with the questions that we're able to answer, but also the sample sizes are growing, which is good too, because when you're talking about a sample size of 5 or 10 individuals, that's a lot less applicable than when we start to see dozens and then into the hundreds and then
meta-analysis, systemic reviews. Like we're starting to see this.
Thousands in the population. So that becomes really, really impactful. And then you start to be able to answer much more specified questions from legitimate research sources that you can then subdivide and apply to more people with more personalized goals that reach across like different parts of the fat loss journey, or maybe you've already reached your forever number, but you're still dealing with XYZ and you're in your 60s. And it's like, how does this apply to me? Because I haven't seen any of that data. So being able to get really granular with it has been one of my favorite things to see over the last 5 years.
And that really speaks to why we do this. And then we'll go into a momentary self-aggrandizing moment, and then we're going to share some of the really cool data from the episodes and where some of these episodes that we feel, y'all, as episode 300, as we celebrate, that we should go back and listen to. And I'm going to go back and listen to these as well, because some of these are old and it's been a while.
Yeah.
But it really speaks to the why we do this. It comes down to the fact that we have an overabundance of information today, right? And the reality of the State of the Union is we have more heart disease, more cancer, more diabetes, more Alzheimer's, which, by the way, is type 3 diabetes in other countries, has not yet been adopted here in the United States for reasons that we won't go down the rabbit hole with, in our opinion. But we're seeing more and more and more and more and more chronic lifestyle metabolic issues, yet we have more and more and more and more tests and specialists and all these different types of things. So for us, it was like, wait a minute, If we want different long-term results, then we need to operate outside of the status quo. And we truly believe that fasting is a vehicle that can work for anyone. It's been around for ages. It's tried and true. It's not new. And we've seen this in the research that they're now starting to look at this as possible solutions for those chronic lifestyle, obesity-related, diabetes-related issues. And I never knew that we'd be having this conversation. I never knew we'd be 300 episodes in. Who the hell knew? You and I had no idea what we were doing. Some days I still feel like we don't. But we're like, okay, well, we're doing something because we're getting a response and people are consuming and people are doing challenges and we're still hearing the testimonials and the questions and the submissions, and we're so appreciative for all of that. But we're really seeing this shift to what we call complementary alternative medicine and functional medicine rather than the standard medical system that we have that is really great at saving your life and really great at diagnosing and really great for life-saving situations. But if that system was working, then we wouldn't have these epidemics that we have when it comes to chronic lifestyle and health and all-cause mortality. So the why behind we do what we do is because we want to pull each one of you out of the matrix, one episode at a time, one action set at a time, one fast at a time, right? So from the feedback we get from the data is we go right to the source. We've used multiple, hosting platforms for our podcast. Never knew I know anything about that when we started this either. We're going to go right to the source. We're going to go to Apple Podcasts where we first launched the episode, the show, right? And there's something called average consumption. So first of all, I want to highlight the fact that we are at 4.5 million downloads. So shout out, clap, virtual high five to each and every one of you. Near just shy, like 1,200 shy of 100,000 of you have listened to our story and why fasting matters to us and ultimately what we want for you by adopting a fasting lifestyle. So I never could have dreamed that we would be in the top 0.5% of the 3.4 million podcasts in the world. So in the top 15,000, some of you are going, well, that's kind of sounds like a participation trophy. And I'm like, no, what it really speaks to is just the consistency that fasting has still had such an impact on us, and that you, the listener, you, the challenger, you, the coaching client, keeps us going to want to continue to pull you out of the matrix and encourage you that there is another way to operate outside of that status quo to get a different result, to see that transformation. And we'll share some of the biggest, the 5 or 6 biggest transformations, the best stories that we've seen over the last few years. But we want to make a push to 5 million. Tommy was like, let's make a 5 million goal by the end of the year. And I was like, that's cool, but I know the numbers, so that'd be some substantial growth.
Right.
He's like, no, we're doing it. I'm like, okay, great. We're doing it. So this is where we're going to have a call to action. We want you to be a part of this episode. So hashtag fasting300, right? We want you to share this with your friends, share it with a coworker, break the first 2 rules of fasting, okay? Right. It's fine. You're allowed. We're giving you the hall pass. Hashtag fasting300. And what we want you to do is add 300 minutes to your fasting schedule this week. Some of you are immediately going to go, what's the schedule? What do I do? How do I do that? Because that's what Tommy did, because that's where his mind operates. And I said, I don't care. They'll figure it out.
Right.
But here's a couple of ideas. You could simply extend one of your fasts this week by 5 hours. Hashtag fasting300. Tag us on social. Send us an email. Share the podcast. Hashtag fasting300. People are going to be like, what the hell is that? Maybe this is the stepping stone for your friend who thinks you're crazy, that you should ask them to fast for 300 minutes. And they're like, a 5-hour fast?
Right,
well, hell yeah. Anyone can do that, right?
I could do that.
Yeah. Hey, John, we're going to meet for golf this. Don't eat breakfast.
Yeah.
I'll meet you at the course, right? Whatever it is. Or you could more practically, because this is Tommy's zone of genius, is you could just add 1 hour to all of your fast Monday through Friday of this upcoming week. Or the podcast comes out on Tuesday, Wednesday through Sunday, right? But we want you to be a part of this 300th episode with the hashtag fasting300 hashtag.
Yeah, because every little share really goes a long way for like, it helps to insulate you, because it's a subconscious vote for you that, hey, you know what, this is important to me, and it's important enough to me that I want to share it with somebody else. I want somebody else to kind of experience some level of what I've been able to do, and that's really where all of these conversations started, is that we had a hope that more people could experience what we had just like, oh man, like it felt like uncovering. But to your point earlier, we didn't invent fasting. Like nobody invented fasting, right? But at the same time, the metabolic revolution that we're kind of like in the middle of, and seeing like with the uncovering that insulin and the things that are part and parcel to our lifestyles are the cause and the solution of our metabolic issues that we see as a state and a nation and a world and a human race here. We have big issues that we're looking to kind of conquer. So, but it all starts with one conversation at a time. So one little share like that helps to go a long way towards that 5 million goal. Yep. And every single person listening, you're part of that goal too, and part of everything that we do here.
So we want to share a stat. It's called average consumption. And in the podcast world, what this is, and Apple Podcast does this, is it shows us really something cool. So our episodes have, a lot of our episodes, we're going to highlight just the first few, like the top 5, so to speak. Maybe I'll go 6 or 7. I reserve the right to do that in real time.
Okay.
And sometimes the episodes have a consumption rating over 100%. So like, what does that mean? I'm like, wait a minute, that math's not mathing.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean, what that means is that you, the listener, aren't just listening all the way through to the episode. So having a podcast episode of 80% consumption or greater is really good in the industry metrics, right? That's what I've been told. I don't really know, but that's what I've been told. So what this means, if we have 100% or greater, that means you're going back and re-listening, replaying parts, or even listening a second and or third time.
Those times when you get into the car and your husband or wife is with you and you go, okay, babe, like you got to hear this one part of this one podcast. When you go back, because you've already listened to it, you're going back, that's over 100% consumption right there.
So if you go back and listen to 15 minutes, now it's 115 minutes. Let's say it's a 100-minute episode, right? So You're adding to that. So what that tells us is that these are the most valuable conversations that we've had throughout 300 episodes.
Right.
And this is absolutely the biggest compliment you could ever give us. And these episodes are episode 10, 182% consumption rate.
Wow.
I'm like, episode 10, do we even know what the hell we were doing yet? Right? This is intermittent fasting window, 18.6 intermittent fasting window, powerful research data, 6x fat loss boost, muscle sparing, respiratory ratio, and getting started with your fasting plan.
Yep.
Episode 10, go back and listen. Episode 111, meal planning for your fasting goals. Keto, paleo, Whole30, vegan, which is the best for me? What's in your fridge? Simple rules for healthy eating. That's 178%.
Wow.
Episode 77, should I take a walk after dinner? Yes. Lowering blood sugar and insulin with exercise, preventing diabetes and obesity, avoiding perfectionism. 163%.
Wow.
Episode 10, episode 111, episode 77. Then we got episode 101. 160%. How quickly should I lose weight? Won't I burn muscle if I try to lose weight too quickly with fasting? We're going to share a couple of testimonials here in a minute that say otherwise. Metabolic risk factors for slow versus fast weight loss. Why many diets are low calorie but high insulin. That was a doozy. Episode 101, 160%. Episode 97, 158% consumption, meaning y'all went back and re-listened. The truth about managing your blood sugar levels. Won't fasting cause my blood sugar to go too low? Why managing blood sugar can derail weight loss. This is a slippery slope with this new data explosion that we have with wearable devices and CGMs now that they're allowed to be, gotten without a prescription. Mm-hmm. So I think this is a really good one to highlight. 158% consumption.
Wow.
Why managing blood sugar can derail weight loss? Because you should have that as a target to manage your blood sugar. But if that's in the primary driver's seat, that can absolutely derail weight loss when you don't take a full picture of what's going on with sleep and stress and food choices and all those other things as well.
And exercise. What about just exercise? If you live and die by the CGM or that kind of, especially if you're further down the rabbit hole of pre-diabetes and then into diabetes, and then you've been on insulin, or you've been thinking about it like trying to maintain your blood sugar within strict goalposts, then every time you start to even go for a walk after dinner, you might see that exercise-based glucose dump as a bad thing. But really, it's not a bad thing at all. It's a really, really good thing. But you could see a temporary spike in your blood sugar right there. And so if that's discouraging you from taking the action that's ultimately going to lead to better and more long-term control over the blood sugar and the fat loss, then that can be problematic. So oftentimes it's the personalized interpretation of the data that really matters, right?
Yep. Great episode. Couple more here. I'm going to make the cutoff 120%, right?
Okay.
So I'm just
Okay.
going to cut it off at 120%. Everything else under that, thank you.
Yeah.
So episode 61, surprise fasting perks and modern day survival, regaining control during chaos, uncommon benefits of fasting.
Yep.
137%. I remember that episode.
I like that one.
February of 2021. Episode 100, one of our other Keystone episodes, fasting, #wins and celebration. Where do I start? Holiday boundaries for success. Tap into our fasting community. This is when we launched our Facebook groups, right?
Yep.
137%. Episode 151, 20-4 versus 16, 24 versus 16-8 fasting windows. Is OMAD effective for fat loss? Does eating more at breakfast lead to more hunger or more weight loss? 123% consumption. This one's really key because our position fasting back then versus fasting now versus what we'll get to in a minute with the fasting future is our position on this has changed. And Rick had mentioned this in his shout out that he keeps his window earlier in the day. And we have found that to be great for better sleep, better metabolic function, greater insulin sensitivity. So that's something that we've actually shifted in. So I remember this episode because eating breakfast does not show that you're going to consume more later in the day. It actually shows skipping breakfast leads you to consume more later in the day.
Yeah, which is a little tricky because skipping breakfast is essentially the easiest first step that you could take to extend your natural fast, your natural overnight fast. And then also if you're used to seeing your blood sugar numbers in the morning and you want to keep those from elevating further, then it feels natural and intuitive to just skip breakfast. And it's not a bad plan at all. But I love the fact that Rick highlighted that he's been doing those 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. windows. Like that's his 6-hour nutrition opportunity window. That's working really well for him. Guess what? Your body is primed insulin sensitivity wise earlier in the day to have a much better physiological effect versus a later 6-hour nutrition opportunity window. Even a little bit shorter window later on in the day won't be as effective for most people as a longer nutrition opportunity window earlier in the day. That's just how we're set up. And so good for you, Rick, for kind of figuring that out. And that's what's been working for you. But I really, OMAD can get tricky. And but it is one of the tools we want to be developed in our fasting tool belt for sure, whether it's for at the beginning of our journey or a little bit later on in our journey, or a muscle that we flex, maybe not every single day during maintenance, but maybe on a lot of days, because hey, a lot of times for many of us, depending on how you eat, you're going to need a little bit longer than just one meal to get in full nutrition during maintenance times, right?
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to part 1 of episode 300. We had so much we wanted to talk about that we're going to split this into 2 parts. So stick around next week. We'll see you then for part 2 of episode 300. We're going to share some amazing testimonials and transformations, give you some action steps, and just put a bow on this just amazing journey that we've been on with you over the last 5 years. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening. Till next time.
So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.